This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
Let's get to some questions. We got tons of questions. There's no way we'll get to them all. If you want to ask a question about next week, you should just go follow us. It's at Prichard Show on Twitter. You'll probably see something pinned to the top very soon, and you can drop your question right there, and that's where I'll see it. Next week, we're doing a big show, by the way. It's SummerSlam 2005, one of our most requested shows ever. On top, incredibly, it's Shawn Michaels versus Hulk Hogan, and there is so much to unpack there. But let's wrap up Bob Backlund. Rajiv wants to know, having not seen many Bob Backlund matches before the 90s, what's the one Bob Backlund match I should go out of my way to watch?
Anything with Pat Patterson.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Pat Patterson running Madison Square Garden with Backlund were some of Backlund's best matches.
Another question from Rajiv. In Bruce's eyes, what does he consider to be greater, the number of championships won or the length of the reign?
The length of the reign.
Do you think that he held the title so long, meaning he was just a great champion? It was a babyface territory. Was there nobody else at his level at the time as far as believability? Why do you think he had such a long run?
Because they didn't have anybody else.
Adam wants to know, what's Bruce's opinion of the towel throw? It's been said that Bob didn't want to do the job for the Sheik. I know that predates you, but there has been lots of debate over the years about who was agreeable and not so much.
Well, I don't think that Bob didn't want to do the job for the Sheik. I just think that Bob was a little taken aback and shocked at having to drop the championship. There's a difference. I think Bob would have done the job for anybody at any time, but I think that he was bristled at the fact of him losing the championship.
Lots of people think that Bob and Razor didn't get along and they were both trying to one up each other during the match at WrestleMania 9. We got various versions of that question. Did you ever hear that those guys were just oil and water?
They were oil and water, and it wasn't, like they didn't really get along bad, but they did not click. No pun intended.
Here's an interesting question here that I don't guess I really ever thought about. Bob cried during an interview after losing the title. Was that to garner sympathy, or was he really an emotional guy? I found it awkward to watch.
Well, Bob really is an emotional guy, but also he's a very shy guy that you would be hard pressed to get that, as Michael Hayes would say, get that emotionality on the camera. And I think that we were able to do that in that situation where you did see Bob emotional and was a little over the top, and he was able to do it in front of the camera.
Here's one from a wrestling historian on Instagram. He says, what was the payoff for Backlund's presidential campaign going to be?
What the fuck do you think? Win the presidency, become the president.
I love you, Bruce.
What's the payoff? That's a fucking payoff.
Charlie Thrower wants to know, better chicken wing, Bob Backlund or Marty Scurll?
Oh, Bob Backlund.
You've told a story on here. This one comes from Adam. He says, Bruce told a story that Bob would make fans earn an autograph from him. Did anybody ever tell him to go screw off? That's way too much of an ask for a fan that just wants an autograph. And by the way, Bruce, I think that's what makes it so great, don't you? If he's the heel, he's not just giving it to you. He's going to make you work for it.
I absolutely loved it. And, there were people that thought, okay, this is a little weird, but yeah, it was what it was. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
The Closet Champion wants to know, was Vince going to put any effort into getting Backlund on a formal ballot when he was running for presidency? Stephen Colbert got on a ballot in South Carolina with a similar gimmick. Was there ever any consideration for trying to do that in Connecticut, New York, Massachusetts, anywhere in the Northeast?
Bob did go through the registration process of running. You have to fill out a bunch of stuff to be able to get on the ballot. Yes, we did do that with Bob.
Owen wants to know, for a time period in the 90s, Bob often looked at his hands when he was out in the ring. Do you reckon he knew how big Batista's dick was and he just thought he needed two hands to hold it? Since you're on a cell phone, I feel like I should ask, can you hear me now? Eric Rottencrotch wants to know, how would Michael Hayes pronounce the word plebeian?
Pronounce the word what?
Plebeian. You know, Bob Backlund used to come out and he would say,
Well, hey, are we going to have any of them plebeians up there? Where the fuck is the plebeian section, Dave?
I don't know why your Michael Hayes makes me laugh, but it does. Ari wants to know, Backlund came back in 92. Was the plan to make him champion made even back then? If not, what was the plan? Because it seems like, he'd come back after such a long layoff. Do you think, I mean, I guess the gist of what Ari's asking there is, when you brought him back in 92, did you sort of have in your mind's eye, we've got to try him as a heel?
No, I think it was come back and let's see what we have and let's see what we can do with Bobby and what he's willing to do.
Dismal Abysmal writes, does Bruce remember anything about Bob Backlund interacting with Hulk Hogan during Hulk's brief run in 93? They appeared on TV a few times together in the early 80s, but once Bob left the company, he was openly critical of the 24-inch pythons, brother.
And what's the question though?
Well, did they ever have any interaction that you recall in 93, Backlund and Hogan? Cause they're both in the promotion here.
It was cordial. I don't think it was anything out of the ordinary. No.
Do you think it could have worked, a babyface Hogan and a heel Backlund in 93, hypothetically?
No.
Why so adamantly no?
Because same reason Razor and them didn't work. Big time styles clash.
Pinder J wants to know, in their heyday, who had the better cardio, Bob Backlund or Ric Flair?
The better what?
Cardio. It's like exercise, you know, when guys are working out.
Oh God, that's, I would give the nod to Backlund, but that's on a hair, man, because Flair and his cardio, unmatched. So that one's a tough one. They were pretty damn close.
Ken Brzezinski wants to know, in his heyday, how would Bob have fared against Brock Lesnar in a shoot?
I think Bob would have fared very well in Bob's heyday against any of these mixed martial artists in the UFC or anywhere else. I think Bob would have been able to hold his own.
Early Raw Manhattan Center crowds were on fire for Bob Backlund in 93. What was the backstage reaction to the smart fans who cheered so loudly for Bob?
I think we knew that was going to happen. I think there was going to be that element, and that was the beauty of Bob Backlund, that character at that time. It was polarizing.
Fat Guy from Fargo wants to know, Bob always seemed like a wholesome guy. Was he ever known to have any fun, have a cocktail, enjoy some of the quote unquote chocolate cake, hit a shoe show, anything that might surprise us?
Bob liked to have a beer now and then, and was just a great guy. I mean, yeah, Bob had fun. Bob was a human being, but yeah, he would imbibe from time to time.
Great question here from Jason. He says, I live in the same town as Mr. Backlund, and every 2 weeks I see him checking out a stack of books from the library. I want to know, who were some of the bigger readers in the locker room that Bruce has seen over the years?
Glenn Jacobs, big one. Really depends. But Glenn Jacobs is one that stands out, that's constantly reading. The other one is John Cena.
How did Backlund fit in with the personalities of his second run Guys like the Click, Brett and Owen, Mabel, the Head Shrinkers. Did he ride with anyone? We've sort of broken down the talent, but this is an interesting question. If he does feel like the odd man out to a lot of these guys, does he have trouble finding a riding partner? Do you recall?
No, I think, as a matter of fact, I think he traveled with Virgil for a while, but there were a few different people. Bob Holly, I believe he traveled with, and yeah. Bob could fit in. He's a chameleon, fit in anywhere.
Craig Knapp wants to know, how pissed was Vince when Backlund referred to Diesel as Kevin Nash on Raw? Also, was Vince pissed at Shawn Michaels for pointing it out while doing commentary with him? Was there any heat on either guy for that? This is an interesting follow-up question, because you on our recent Diesel episode talked about the fact that Jim Ross really wanted to talk about Kevin Nash, whereas you just wanted to talk about Diesel, not really exposing the guy's legitimate athletic background, unless he was someone like Kurt Angle, like a legitimate gold medalist or something like that. But if you were just a player on a basketball team that nobody had ever heard of, maybe let's not highlight that and make you seem like a bigger deal as Diesel. So when he calls him Kevin Nash, is that a directive from the office to do it, or is he just watching the programming and just does it on his own?
Probably a fuck up.
Okay. TJL66 says, we always hear about Bob's physical conditioning being legendary. Where do you rank Bob's conditioning all time? We sort of compared him to Flair earlier, but when you lump in guys like Kurt Angle and Shelton Benjamin, and there's been so many great athletes who've come through, do you think he's top 5?
Definitely top 5. I'd probably put him, and I'd put him up there with Flair. I'd put, like a guy like John Morrison, unbelievable conditioning. It was a different time then. Those guys, Dory Funk Jr. would sit in the back and jump rope and do push-ups and work out all night long, and then go out and do a 60-minute match. Flair, just with the squats and the conditioning, unbelievable. So Bob Backlund, though, another breed.
Interesting question from On This Day in WWE. And he quote tweets something from 94, where it's a vignette that's Halloween themed about Bob Backlund's state of mind. And there's like spiders and spooky stuff, but it shows him sort of snapping. And his question is, was Bob Backlund the first character to have a quote unquote darker side in the WWF? It felt like up until this time, the wrestlers were always portrayed in a more comic book style, goody versus bad guy. But this heel turn felt quite different back then.
Well, it felt different because it was different, and it was taking someone who had been a part of the company in the past in a very pure and homogenized way, and changing that up a little bit. So I thought it was good.
We'll get 2 more questions here, then we'll wrap things up. One of Bob Backlund's infamous promos declared he had never eaten marijuana. Can you confirm any truth to this statement?
I doubt Bob has ever eaten marijuana.
Such a great random thing to say on TV. I mean, in that era, I don't think there were a ton of writers running around. Did he just go out there and freestyle that on his own? Is it okay to say I've never eaten marijuana on, I guess, children's programming in 94?
Well, yeah, that's a good message, kids. Don't eat marijuana.
I don't know why that's fun, but it is.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.